Region. This is Joe Garnett, your family life leader.
And I am Deirdre Garnett.
Welcome to Family Life Now. We are continuing our conversation that we've had over the last several weeks, actually back in May. And we are interviewing a dear set of friends, Robert and Willette Johnson, who are visiting with us from Charlotte, North Carolina. And we're going to a series of questions with them. We're going to have a conversation about what it is like to live in the world we're living in right now with the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as all of the things that we're dealing with post the George Floyd incident around social justice and the like. And we could not think of a better couple to talk to about family and how to cope with this other than the Johnsons. So we're so glad that they could be with us today. So I'd like to welcome Robert and Willette. Hello, how are you guys?
Hi, guys.
We're good.
Hey, guys, good to see you.
Awesome. Awesome. It's great to see you all. We wish we could be together, but COVID-19 and all, we'll have to settle for this.
For now.
For now.
So Robert and Willette, if you wouldn't mind, for just briefly, just introduce yourselves to our audience, if you don't mind. Just tell us a little bit about you.
So I'm Robert Johnson, and this is my wife, Willette. We live in Charlotte, North Carolina. We've lived here now for, well, my goodness, probably 35, 40 years, I guess.
Oh, maybe 30 years.
30 years? Oh, okay. We are, so I've learned how to do this. We're celebrating our 49th wedding anniversary on this weekend, the 27th.
Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord.
So we are members of the Northeast Seventh-day Adventist Church here in Charlotte. Our pastor is Pastor Evan Willis, and I'm the head elder, and my wife is the education secretary for the church. And we have three adult sons, who we love very, very much. They're very, very special to us.
Awesome. And quite frankly, Robin, that was one of the reasons we wanted to reach out to you all, because we know your sons, and it's quite timely that we would be speaking to you when considered all the things that are going on around us, and what it's like to be a young black man here in America. I couldn't think of a better group to speak to. So thanks so much for agreeing to spend time with us today.
Oh, and I'm so glad to be here with you guys as well. You didn't mention that we have a lot in common. These guys are businessmen, and Willette and I are teachers. We are educators, and so we have lots in common. We watched you guys raise your boys, and we were coming up right behind you. And who better than to be our role models on earth than Robert and Willette? So we are so excited that you're here today.
Thank you. We are so honored.
We are. We're speechless to that. I know.
Well, hopefully you'll find your speech, because we have some questions we want to pose to you guys. So we're gonna go ahead, because we only have a half hour together. So I want to make sure that we get to the questions that we want to share. So here's one thing we want you to think about, and take a few moments to give us your thoughts. But please share with us 3 words to describe how you feel at this point post George Floyd. What are you feeling individually, as a couple? 3 words to describe what it feels like living in this time that we're living in.
Well, we feel afraid, and that may sound odd, but being parents of 3 sons, it's really scary. Even though they are grown men,
right,
it's still very, very scary. When they're out, we worry, and you can't do anything. They're grown people. And we just continuously praying for safety,
I feel fragile as I look at how quickly and easily life can be taken away, how it is, the society defined by somebody else as to whether or not it has value and how much value that has. So there's a fragility associated with that, with this whole experience for me. I feel hopeful at the same time as I look at the demonstrations and the protests. We've had over the years, over my lifetime, various things that have happened. And, there's some sort of uprising. The strategy that seems to be playing out by various political factions is, well, we'll give it time, and everybody will sort of punch themselves out, like a fighter in the ring, and everybody will go back home or go back to normal. But I don't see that happening. So I'm hopeful as I see how sustained these protests are, that they will mean something, and also because we seem to be having a global impact as well.
It does seem different this time. That much gives us hope.
Right. Right.
You mentioned just something at the end. I will share for us what was also very impactful was seeing the marches in other countries, like you just said, across the globe. It is as though the entire world had the same experience, and it became real for everyone. So I can understand that perspective.
And we've seen this before. We've seen it happen. We've seen Rodney King. We've seen so many things happen over the decades, really. But this time, you almost have a sense of, now you believe us, like it has been happening. And there is systematic or systemic racism that this country really has to overcome if we're going to live up to what we say we are. We have to overcome this. So it has moved us in a marked way as well.
Right. So I'll add my third word, and that is exhausted. It just feels exhausting sometimes to just be Black. Have to go out from day to day and help other people understand that it's okay to be around you.
Right.
One of the so Joe, you and I do consulting from time to time, and I was working with a group in one of our neighborhoods here, and as we were going through the process, one of the ideas that surfaced for them was that it always seems like it's Black people who need to explain to white people what it means to be Black. We don't ever have white people asking Black people, so tell me, are we okay? But we're always having to make them feel comfortable with us. And after a lifetime of that and seeing so many of these incidences come and go, it just feels exhausting. You keep hoping that this incident or that incident will be the thing that turns the tide. And I just feel like we're just disappointed from time to time.
I guess we're always having to be conscious that we're Black.
Right.
Always in the back of your mind. Watch how you look. One of our sons, who is very conservative, wears dreads, and he was in an incident where he was robbed. And when the police came, he had to explain to them, I'm not like just, they thought because he had dreads, he was just a different kind of person. And his having to explain, I'm not like you're thinking, I'm this or I'm that. And it's exhausting, as he said.
Right.
It is.
And my work from time to time, I ask people, so how do you identify as Black, white, whatever that is? Then I ask, so how many times during the course of the day do you think about being whatever that is? And, my Caucasian friends ask me, so what do you mean? I never have to think about that. My minority people who are in the audience are writing feverishly. I think about it when I buy a car. Is it too flashy? Is it too this? I think about it when I decide how I'm going to comb my hair. I think about it when I decide what colors I'm going to wear today. Everything I do, I think about being Black. How am I going to show up and present myself?
Right. Right.
and everything.
Right.
Well, we're going. So let's go on to the next question. You both grew up in the South. Where do you see us as a country in relation to race and social justice? And we may have already touched on some of this, but if you could briefly just tell us where you think we are as a country.
Well, you mentioned the word systemic earlier,
Mhm.
and I'm amazed that the question is even being asked in this day and age. You know, do we have systemic racism?
Mhm.
And to hear the Attorney General or the National Security Advisor say, no, we just have a few bad apples here and there, and all you have to do is get rid of those bad apples and everything will be fine. And it's just shocking to me that there's that mindset. So when I look at the last 6 months and we were talking about the pandemic, we were realizing that, hey, Black and brown people seem to be dying and getting sick more than other people.
Right.
And what we were saying is that there is a systemic issue here somewhere. And that was before the George Floyd incident. And, you know, the idea of systemic means that everywhere in society, there is this racial component. So
Right.
it's in healthcare when we look at pandemic, it's in education when we look at who has access to schools and resources. It's in the justice system.
Right.
So, you know, so when we look at you know, who gets harsh sentences for minor crimes, and it's typically a certain group of people. So, you know, I just see that thread constantly just being woven through just the way that we are. So I'm disappointed that the question is being asked, but I'm glad at the same time that maybe we're at a point now where we can explore some answers or potential solutions to that question.
Mhm.
I don't know that I feel that the problem will ever be solved until we get to heaven.
Mhm.
However, I do feel a little glow of hope if the young people or the people that are out now, if they stick to what they're doing and they demand and they're talking like they are not going to stop until there are some change, and we can see some changes already being made.
Right.
I also feel like with a change in leadership, I think we can go much further than we are now.
Yeah.
And I'll leave that alone.
Enough said. I think
Enough
we all
said.
know what you're talking about.
And Willette, to your point, with regard to the individuals that are marching, you know, we're encouraged by their age, and we're also encouraged by the demographics. You know, they're in many instances, Dee and I and the kids marched a few weeks ago, and the composition of the marchers was probably 70% white,
I know.
which was amazing to me and to us
That
both.
never used to happen.
We were in another minority too, in that we were like the oldest people out there.
I
Yeah,
was
we
just
were out there with we were
we
out, we were
marched
there,
in college when Martin Luther King was, and believe me, there was
right.
Yep, that's it.
So that was encouraging. There were 30,000 people in the march in Chicago, and I would suggest maybe 70% of them were white. So it was, from that perspective, it was encouraging.
Yeah.
What does that say? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Right.
and you know, for any significant, if anything like that significant to happen, we need people of like mind
Exactly.
in the majority to stand up and acknowledge, because in and of ourselves, our voice is not loud enough. We do need others to step up and say, this is not right. We need to do different. We can do better.
Okay, so two of you have been blessed to have raised 3 young Black Christian men to adulthood. What conversations did you have to have with them to navigate police interactions, and deal with racism in general?
That's probably a universal question, and we probably all had the same conversation. Mainly, try to get home alive.
That is it.
Children have different personalities, as you guys know, but we have one, our youngest, who is just, he doesn't think things are fair, and so we have to say, cool, no, it's not fair, but you just try to get home.
That is right.
Put your mouth. Don't argue. You can't win that argument. So those kinds of conversations. Our middle son, Ryan, to you guys, decided some years ago that he would count how many times he had been stopped by police. I'm going to say within the last 10, 12 years. That long. And he stopped counting at like 95.
What?
And we'll be on the phone with him even now. He's a pastor now, and he's on his way to church Sabbath morning. And we'll be talking, and he'll say, okay, there's a police behind me. There's a policeman. He's looking. He's going to pull me over, you know. So those kind of conversations we have and still have, even as grown men.
Right. In fact, we were just having that conversation yesterday. My youngest son was having some car trouble, and he was outside of DC, about 45 minutes from home. And when he called, we were on the phone with my middle son, and he heard the conversation, and he said, tell him, stay away from the police. So, I mean, that was just this knee-jerk reaction of the times in which we're living. But my boys talk to me often about the conversations that we've had growing up. You know, we had some rules. One, if you go into a store, I don't care how late you are, you never run out. Always walk out of the store. Two, when you buy something, no matter how small it is, always ask them to put it in a bag, even if it's just a pack of gum. Never go out with items in your hand, because people could mistake you for having stolen that item. So there are things like that we have to teach them. Just last Friday, I had someone from one of my workshops call and say, you know, and she was a white educator, and she said, I'd like to, we want to organize a march or something for our kids. And we want to teach them that everybody's important. You know, we don't want to introduce them too early to the ugliness of race and racism. So the people who were in the room with us said, well, you know, this is a teachable moment for them. If you don't teach them now, you've really missed a significant opportunity. And for Black parents, we don't have the luxury of deciding, well, when is it too early to teach them how to behave and, you know, what to look out for in order to come home alive. So, you know, it was a moment for us to explore kind of what privilege is. You know, other people get to decide what to teach and, you know, when to teach it and all that. We don't get to decide that. And so we talk about our boys. So my youngest son will be 40 years old this year. So they're no longer boys, but they're still now, even as adults.
That's amazing.
I know it.
Having to deal with the realities of.
Oh, absolutely.
Rodney is going to be 40 years old.
And December,
What?
believe it or not. But not only that, then you have then the two older ones have sons, and so they're going through that. Not so much the middle one, because his son is just like 10, but he still has to talk with him, you know. But Bobby, our oldest child's son, will graduate high school this year coming up, you know. And he's so innocent and so he doesn't understand. And Bobby's having to sit down, you know, and teach these things. Like you say, we don't have the luxury of waiting until it's a good time. We have to do it immediately.
But he is 6'6".
Yeah, he is 6'6".
So
That would be in his favor.
he walks into a store or he's imposing, and you have that fear factor.
Of
So
course.
one last story. So when they were little, our family thing was, in order to give mom some time, I would take the kids Christmas shopping every year. And it was just really, really cute, until they began to grow. And then you have these 4 black guys over 6 feet tall walking into a store together. And the clerk doesn't know, are they shopping or are they here to rob me? I mean,
Right. Literally, that's what they had.
Hands up. So.
And the masks don't help.
Right. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Okay.
Well, guys, we have one more question for you. Coming down to the end of our time. It's a critical election year. We've got COVID-19 and all the social unrest that we have experienced in these last few weeks. What are you all doing to cope with the convergence of these world-changing events?
We are praying a lot.
A whole lot.
So
Right there, you sit right there.
Yes.
We have a Bible study that we're doing by Zoom, which is pretty cool.
My hairdresser guys.
And
Yeah.
as we're going through the Bible studies and we're looking at the signs of the end, that we're in the end, all of those things just come rushing at us, from all kinds of angles. The role of the United States, we begin to see again how fragile democracy is.
Right.
That it is, you can't legislate morality.
Right.
Okay. But of course, we'll get to the point where we'll try from a prophetic standpoint to do that. We begin to see just how fragile the truth is. And I used to be able to, turn on and watch the news and say, okay, so that's the truth. I can't do that anymore. So it really requires a lot of prayer, a lot of study, so that, as the Lord says, he can help us to be discerners, so that we might be able to have wisdom when we need wisdom, see truth when we need to see truth. So all of these things for me simply say what the Bible's been telling me all along is exactly the way this is going to play out. And I know it's, in the long run, it's not going to matter who gets elected president. We know how the story's going to end. Certain things
but temporarily.
Certain things delayed or hastened, depending on who that happens to be. But this is certainly a biblical time, and we can't lose sight of it. If you do, you really get frustrated.
Yeah, it is stressful. Definitely stressful. This whole 2020. I mean, we had no idea. In February we had gone to Vegas to the workshops out there, and just enjoying life. And we hadn't been home 3 weeks.
3 weeks, yeah.
Before this all hit, and now we've not been back out the door. Except to the grocery store. It's just really, really been something.
Yeah.
So you have to pray. That's the only way you can make it.
That's it.
Robert, I wanted to highlight something you said I think is really impactful, is this idea that the truth is on trial. It doesn't really matter at this point. Everything potentially can be twisted, and what you know to be true get called into question, or something that you think is completely absurd is now parading as truth. And I can imagine for many that's a really uncomfortable place, and I'm not giving it enough credit, place to be. And to your point, unless you're grounded in truth, the Word of God, it's a disconcerting time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
When I was growing up, and we'd study end time prophecies and the role of the United States and the beast and all that kind of stuff. And we were taking pride in our freedoms to be able to go to church, to be able to, say what we wanted to say and do what we wanted to do. And I could hardly believe that we would ever get to a place where simple freedoms, simple truths would be called into question. And lo and behold, here we are. And we're seeing that happening day after day after day. And to see that so much of the world is willing to follow what is obviously something that is twisted or manipulated or not true.
Right.
Mhm. Absolutely.
We only have a short amount of time left. What other, if any other insights would you like to share with us or our audience about this whole process and coping and where we are at this point in our lives and this part of Earth's history, quite frankly?
Joe, repeat that.
What I was saying was, we only have a short time to continue the conversation. I was just asking, were there any other insights you wanted to pass along based on where we are in this Earth's history and where we are as a people? Just anything stand out for you wanted to share? Coming down.
So I always say that I am a student of righteousness, but I am an expert sinner. So what that says is that, so if I'm thinking like the devil, and I can probably do that to some degree anyway, I see the strategy unfolding, the strategy of, where your government is saying certain things. And even though those things may be helpful for us, we never thought we'd get to a point where, we would not go to church or not do, various things. And I know there are people who say, well, now is the time to kind of rise up and fight against the establishment. I'm not there. But where I am is that I see, like we were talking about how fragile things are, I see how easy it is to create a scenario or respond to a scenario that allows the government to then do certain things, tell us certain things. And this whole thing has really put us on a very slippery slope. So this is, truly the time where we need to ask for spiritual discernment.
Right.
So, we can be able to tell when indeed directions that are being given to us are for our good and we should follow it, or when those directions need to be resisted. So we're in an interesting balancing period.
Right.
We really need much prayer dealing with it.
And prayer is the answer. If I never thought it before, we have to pray. I mean, we talked about our boys, but if I had girls, as you guys do, it's just as bad.
Right.
Still bad, I'll say. I don't know if it's just as bad, but I mean, even having girls and the whole, you just have to ask God every day. We have one of our young elders used to say, Lord, just bubble wrap us as we go out the door. And that's what we need. I mean, for all kinds of protection, not just the COVID, which is what they're talking about, but just the world in general, because it's turning out to be a cruel place to live.
Yeah, certainly. Well, Robert and Willette, we knew that you would be the right people to reach out to on this subject because we always know that you're thoughtful, spiritual, and you're fun. And we're just so glad that you could spend some time with us and share your insights and your perspective. And my hope is that our audience here at the Lake Region Conference camp meeting, I'm sure they have appreciated what you've been able to share. So on behalf of my wife and I, we just want to thank you, and we want to good afternoon to the folks at the Lake Region Conference camp meeting. God bless you all.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for asking us.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
You guys take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
You too.